1. The other day I was at my local pools. I looked over all the open lanes, searching for an uncrowded lane to do some laps. Out of all the available lanes, one had 3 people, and another had 1. Like any reasonable person, I hopped in the lane with only a single other person, and began to do my laps. On my first lap, I overtook the other person, and was told quite aggressively that the fast lane is over there, pointing to the lane with 3 people in it. I am usually a fast swimmer, but the lap I did was average, if not slow. Before I continue, I should mention that literally every other slow person that I've swum with had been completely okay with me swimming fast. Where I swim, there is also an unofficial custom that when 2 people are in a lane, you swim side by side instead of the usual clockwise circle. This person was not okay with me swimming quickly, was very rude in telling me to move to a more crowded lane, and was, in fact, a very slow swimmer. Well, I thought to myself, I'm definitely not moving to a more crowded lane. I guess I should start swimming slower to appease her. I guess since my shoulder really hurts from my competition the other day, and I definitely don't want to injure it more, I should do some relaxing kicking. And that's exactly what I did. I did kick. Now, my kick is definitely not fast, but I purposely did it even slower because, obviously, this is the slow lane. My kick was so slow, the person started overtaking me. I made sure that they suffered. I would start when they were very close to the wall to force them to slow down, and I would swim in such a way that they didn't have enough space to overtake me. The best thing happened about 10 minutes after I started my malicious compliance. 2 other old-timers jumped into our lane. Now I started swimming in such a way that I would be next to the old-timers in a way that suggested that I was overtaking them. But I never seemed to quite be fast enough to actually overtake them. How unfortunate. Oof. This formed a wall, and I would occasionally look back to see the person stopping every few seconds to not run into anyone, looking annoyed every time they had to do so. Eventually, they got so fed up that they hopped out, and as soon as they did so, I started swimming at my normal pace again, making sure that every time I finished a lap, I would make eye contact to further annoy them. The old-timers weren't upset that I was swimming faster. In fact, no one who jumped into that lane was. I hope that person learns their lesson and never tries to tell anyone that they are swimming too fast aggressively ever again. I would like to point out that I have no issue moving to another lane or sticking to one side of my lane, but I definitely have an issue with aggression. 2. About a decade ago, I worked for a big-name company, Electrostatic Powder Coating Semi-Wheels. The GM, who was actually a really good boss, got a trainer to come in and teach me what I was doing right and wrong. After a week, we got things narrowed down with the settings on the machines that my quality improved a lot, and my quantity of wheels I could paint in a day improved by about 5 to 10 per day. I was now averaging anywhere from 50 to 65 wheels a day. I used those same settings for almost a year before that same GM started messing with them. I had a few wheels from a trash company come to me covered in dried mud one day. Not the first time, and wasn't going to be the last. I knocked off as much as I could before stripping them, and did my best to blow off what dust was left. I still missed some spots on the edges. Usually when this happens, I end up with tiny holes on the edges of the rims. That day the GM came back to get a count of paint to see what needed to be ordered. "What's with all the drill holes on the edges of these wheels?" "It's from dirt. I didn't get it all off when I blew off the wheels." "Dirt didn't cause this. I think your settings are the issue." "I'm telling you it's dirt. Every time we get these customers' wheels in with dried mud all over them, this is what happens. Dirt doesn't cause this." "I'll have some people come in and check this out." He left after that. Fast forward to next week, and he meets me in the morning with about 4 other people. "These guys are going to look over the machines and adjust things so we no longer have issues." I told you it was dirt. "The professionals are just going to adjust the settings, and you will leave them where they're at. If you don't, you will get written up. This is not up for discussion." Okay, message heard loud and clear. I'll leave it to the professionals and not touch a thing. Thankfully, my powder gun has multiple settings. I asked the professional to set his new settings on another preset. The next day, I noticed the wheels I painted were coming out yellow. I noticed that the paint was very thin in certain spots. Due to my new settings, the positive charge was blasting powdered paint away from the wheels. A few days go by, GM comes back and sees all my new painted white wheels yellow, and asks why everything is coming out yellow. I told him it was because the oven was set too high. Why didn't you change it? That's over 100 wheels that need to be redone. I was told not to change the settings the professionals set, so I didn't touch it. He walked over and turned it down and told me to leave it. A week later, I got called back into the office. One of our biggest customers was complaining that their wheels needed to be removed and repainted after a week or two, due to starting to rust. We delivered over 150 wheels a week to them. What is going on here? The paint too thin and the customer's complaining. Do I need to call the professionals back to look things over? It wouldn't change much because I haven't touched anything on the machines since they were out the last time. Just fix it. I don't care what you do, just fix it. He never questioned me again when it came to powder coating. 3. When I was in Rome, we read about these scams people do. One of which was trying to give you free stuff but guilt-tripping you into giving them something, usually money, in return. At one point this happened. My whole group, who I had informed about this, fell for it. I declined to take a bracelet. Basically, guy comes up and asks where we're from. When you tell him, he makes some random connection between there and where he is from and claims you are family. Then offer to give you something from his family. And then ties these bracelets on your arm, which are hard to get off. Then he asks if you have anything for his family, holding his hand out. My son then proceeds to hand this man $20. This is what it is. He was fine with it. This wasn't the issue. This was just me having seen this scam in process, and now I was aware how it worked in more detail. Also, we found these same identical bracelets at a small shop, like 10 minutes later, for about 30 cents USD. The petty part. So next day, I am by myself walking by the Colosseum, and one of these guys asks me where I am from. Knowing that he's going to try to make a connection, I say I'm from the moon. He's caught off guard but continues his pitch anyway. I tell him I'm not interested, but he stays nagging me. I tell him over and over I'm not interested, but he keeps harassing me. So I finally stop and I'm like, what is it? He says, I want to give you something for my family to yours, bro, that's it. And I say, for free? And he says, yeah, for free from my family to yours. And so, I'm feeling petty because he's been harassing me. I take the bracelet and say thanks and immediately turn and abruptly start walking. He dashes to catch up to me and is like, yo, bro, you got anything for my family? And I say, no, man, sorry, and continue walking. He then grabs me by the shoulder and looks me dead in the eye and says, give it back. And I'm like, what? He says, give it back. Again, more stern. The sales pitch nice guy voice is no more. So I was like, this bracelet? Which I was holding and not wearing, and he holds out his hand. I say, this is mine. You gave it to me. He says, no, it's not free. I then reminded him that he specifically said, free from his family. He then tries to cut me off, as I'm about to cross the street. He starts swearing at me. So I take his bracelet and huck it down a 20-foot drop to the ground level of the area outside the Colosseum. He could still go get it, but he would have to walk all the way around the ramp and far away from me. He starts swearing at me over and over. Then he hawks like he's going to spit on me, and I tell him that's a very bad idea. Finally, he turns and walks away. 4. We've all had those teachers who take their problems out on us, and this story is how I indirectly shamed one of the worst I've publicly encountered. A few years back, I was traveling with my family, and we were taking a bus to our next stop. My mom, an amazing teacher of over 20 years, was sitting next to me, calmly reading and not paying much attention. There was a mother and daughter pair seated directly behind us, probably mid-50s to late 20s. My phone battery was already low, and I didn't want it to die, so I was staring out the window, people-watching. I couldn't help but overhear the loud conversation between the ladies behind me. I soon realized they were both teachers. While the daughter seemed like a decent person, the mother was ranting about how much she hated her students and how happy it made her to torture them. From context, I guess the kids were around 12 to 13 years old. A few examples. If you turn in anything, test, homework, classwork, even 1 second late, regardless of reason, 70% is the max grade you can get. Apparently, she wanted it lower, but admin would get suspicious. If you ask a question she doesn't like, you get shamed in front of the class. She had a running list on the wall tracking how many homework assignments each student missed with snarky comments. Would hide it when admin came by. One student missed a few weeks of class for a death in the family, and she told the whole school it was because he's dramatic and lazy. Admitted to slapping at least 7 students and was only caught once. Instigated fights in student friend groups for entertainment, verbal abuse in general. I heard all of this over a 45-minute period, and the mother seemed so disgustingly proud. The daughter kept trying to tell her how wrong it was to treat students like that, but the mom just laughed and called her stupid, naive, etc. This bitch talked about how school was hell for her growing up, so she wants these new kids to suffer just as much, if not more. She even said it was the best kind of therapy. She should try actual therapy. I was appalled, to say the least. Who the hell treats children like that and then insults their actual child when called out for it? I never heard names or identities to report it officially, so I started thinking. For once I had an idea that would make my usual problem of complaining perfect for this situation. I texted my mom something along the lines of, "The woman behind us is a teacher, and a bitch. I'm gonna go on a rant, and I need you to go along with it. Close your book when ready." As soon as she saw the text, she looked at me and smiled. It was time. I started going on a long, loud rant about Professor Smith at my college that treated the students so poorly. I listed examples similar to the ones that bitch said, with minor tweaks and changes. All the while talking about how much of a negative impact it had on us personally and academically. I whined about how she takes her hate and insecurities out on us, and how miserable everyone is because she's just an overgrown bully on a power trip. I mentioned that even the other professors avoid her because they're disgusted by how she treats us. I ended it by saying I love my amazing teacher mom, and know she would never do any of those things. Because what kind of a loser takes out their frustration on kids? My mom played along perfectly, and we changed the subject after that. I didn't hear a peep from behind us for the rest of the ride. It was amazing to loudly complain about her. In this metaphorical way, all the things she was proud of I exposed as the abuses they actually were. All in a crowded bus with at least an hour left to our destination. My mom was impressed when she got the details later. I wanted to say something to the daughter afterwards, because I felt bad she got caught in the crossfire. But they shuffled us off the bus with incredible speed. I wonder why. My mom and I both desperately wanted to report her, but we have no evidence and nothing to identify either of them. Believe me, if we could have, we would have. 5. For some background, I used to work at a family-owned pizzeria in my hometown. At the time this story took place, I had been delivering food for them as well as picking up the odd pizza oven shift for close to 8 years. Aside from the owner and 2 of our 3 managers, I was their longest tenured employee. Towards the end of my stint working there, I began to feel incredibly disrespected and undervalued by the owner, as well as 2 of our managers. 2 of my regular 4 shifts per week were unfortunately shared with a manager who had started at that job before me, as well as the manager who had started after me. Both of these managers had personal relationships with my boss, and neither of them actually managed anything. Scheduling our shifts was always up to the delivery drivers, waitresses, phone people amongst themselves. We didn't actually have anybody at this pizzeria that functioned as a real manager. Anyway, the manager that had started after me, we'll call her Karen for the sake of this story, had been rudely telling me to fold pizza boxes up for about 4 days in a row. For those of you who aren't aware, when pizza boxes are delivered from wholesalers to pizzerias, they come in stacks of 100, and they don't come folded. There are perforations along the box that make it easy to fold up, but they need to be made into boxes manually. At my pizzeria, it was the delivery people's job to fold the pizza boxes. Anyway, Karen had been rudely ordering me to fold up the pizza boxes for a few days in a row, not once actually asking or saying please. By the 4th day of this, I was fed up with being disrespected by someone who had been working there less time than I had, under an imaginary title that didn't even reflect her job duties. Our seating layout consisted of 2 booths that would seat 2 people, so 4 in total per table. We had 1 table in the back that only had 1 booth that nobody used, and 1 large table with a cornered booth that could fit a party of 10. The delivery guys would sit in the big booth in the back and use the double table to fold up the pizza boxes, unless there was a party larger than 4 people that needed the booth. So when Karen rudely ordered me to fold up boxes for the 4th day in a row, I hatched a plan. I told my delivery partner I'm going to make so many boxes that they'll never ask me to make boxes again. And I did just that. I folded up enough 12-inch pizza boxes to fill the entire cornered booth in the back. That wasn't enough, though, because when I took the boxes from the booth to the shelf where we stored them in the back room, I had to make more boxes, so I filled the booth again. That wasn't enough either, because I stored the boxes that were in the booth on the 1 table that no customers used. Naturally, since there was more room on the large booth, I filled it up with boxes for a 3rd time, making sure that there was no room for any customers to sit. Of course, since my oblivious and unobservant manager didn't notice I was doing this, apparently she noticed any time I wasn't folding up boxes, I began storing the boxes on top of the table. I managed to cover one of the 2 tables in the back with 9 stacks of boxes before Karen noticed what I was doing and told me to stop. In my defense, I stopped folding boxes as soon as Karen told me to. Granted, by the time she noticed what I was doing, there was nowhere for large parties to sit, and nowhere to put the pizza boxes. I lamented the fact that Karen would rather see me come into work and do what was expected of me, instead of going above and beyond, and she told me to stop being a smarty pants. This constant disrespect and underappreciation is what eventually led me to take my talents to another local pizzeria, whose owners actually appreciated the work I did. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, episode 401, and thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please do hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't done so already. If you'd like to support the channel, you can do so by joining my Patreon page, which is linked in the description, and you can also leave a tip by clicking on the heart with the $sign underneath the video. And while that is very much appreciated, it is of course never required. Okay. Don't think we have any other bits and bobs today, so let's move on to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is, have you ever been blissfully unaware of a law, then been genuinely surprised to learn otherwise years later? With me, it turns out I was only kind of sort of breaking the law, but not quite, so it's okay, I guess. But apparently, I'd always thought that it was perfectly legal to ride your bicycle on the pavement in the UK, and that you had to have like a helmet on if you're riding on the road. Turns out, no, you apparently don't need to have a helmet on if you're riding on the road, but furthermore than that, you're technically not allowed to ride on the pavement, which is where I usually choose to do it, just because I think it's safer for bicycle riders, and I'm not a dickhead to pedestrians. But I was looking it up a few weeks back now it was, and I discovered that no, technically speaking, by law, you should ride your bike on the road, which is unsafe because we don't have bicycle lanes. We just don't have the infrastructure for it. At least in my area, there's no bicycle lanes. I wish there was. It turns out, however, when that particular rule was introduced, it was done with the caveat that, alright, just technically, yeah, this is what people should be doing, but unless they're riding like a bunch of farty heads, just, leave them alone. So as long as you're being courteous, stopping for pedestrians to let them by, not mule kicking them as you cycle by, that sort of thing, just leave the cyclists alone, as long as they're doing no harm. Which is a bit of a relief because, as I say, I don't like riding on the road. I have been a little bit more often lately, and I just don't feel safe doing it. I don't like it. That's why I wish that when the streets and everything here have been designed, they've been done with an eye to having bicycle lanes, because bicycles have been a thing for a very long time. It's an older mode of transportation than the horseless carriage. Oh wait, no, sorry, car. We call them cars, don't we? Yeah. Anyway, that was a little thing that I was surprised to learn, and It really hasn't really changed anything for me. So let me know what you think in a comment below. And before we go, let's take a look at the answer of the day from a previous video. And this was, would you rather have self-driving cars or only public transport? And let's see, this one came from Revenge's Ice Cream 400. And today's answer comes from Emily. I totally take the self-driving cars. I never take the bus again. Just too many buses. Plus, you have to interact with the public on buses, and the public is unpredictable. Some of them are lovely. Some of them should keep their distance at all times, no matter the reason. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.